There's nothing that I could do from this point on. Like, my career's over. I'm done. Cat's out of the bag. I've got a problem. My family, like, sat me down and was like, you need to go to treatment and you need to get help. And I was just tired of fighting at this point, and I was like, fine, like, whatever. But it was while I was in treatment that I realized that I had a problem when I couldn't even eat 3 meals a day without, like, breaking down and crying. And freaking out and having like a panic attack, and I realized I didn't want to live like that anymore. And it's when you're stripped of all of your vices that you realize I've got a problem and I can't live like this.
I do want to talk about rehab and all of the change you've been through, absolutely, because you're so courageous for doing it. You said too, you've had cross addictions because you've had to deal with a number of different issues. I just wonder what kind of contribution drugs and alcohol played into it, leading right up until you had to go to rehab, because that was part of your rehabilitation as well, wasn't it?
It actually wasn't a part of the diagnosis of why I was in rehab. I was there for, let's pull up a list, bipolar disorder, anorexia, binge purge type, cutting, depression, and trauma, like post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's no secret that I have come out and talked about, like, experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and but I also self-medicated a lot as a teenager, and it's hard not to, like, especially growing up in Hollywood where you're around anything that you want, basically. I mean, it sounds silly, not that this is like rebellious at all, but I was going to Disneyland whenever I wanted to, and like I was going on vacations whenever I wanted to, and I was just getting whatever I wanted. And being in a city where, like, you're never told no, it's really difficult not to be in a place where you don't fall into the temptation.
And you're underage, and so you can drink if you want to because you're Demi Lovato. Is that how it works?
I think that any teenager, whether you're a celebrity or not, falling into peer pressure, like, sometimes it doesn't matter whether you're of age or not. Sometimes teenagers just drink, and I really didn't care about the law at that point. You know, I was trying to numb my pain, and that's all that mattered.
Mm-hmm. And you had a lot of bad social influences then? You were hanging out with friends that weren't really your friends? And
I had friends that literally would come over to my house, and they would try on my clothes and then, like, take them. Like, when I got out of treatment, I had missing clothes and shoes and handbags, and it was because girls that I let borrow my clothes just never gave them back. Like, people stole from me. Those were the type of people that I surrounded myself with. But they just influenced me into making poor decisions, and, you know, it was my fault. I can't blame other people for my mistakes, but I think that if I were to sit here in front of other teenagers watching, I would let them know that it's my fault for making my decisions, but it's also my fault for surrounding myself with the wrong group of friends.
So when you're in rehab and you finally get this diagnosis of having bipolar disorder, what was your reaction to now knowing what the reason was?
First off, I didn't believe them. I was like, well, how do you know? First of all, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me, because this was when I first got into treatment after a few weeks of being there, and I was like, you know nothing about me, and you haven't been there for the past few years of my life. And then I also was confused. I was like, what is bipolar disorder, and aren't we all bipolar? Like, we all have mood swings, and I just was just confused on everything. But then as I kind of got used to the thought of having it, it kind of made sense. And I was like, okay, you know what, it makes sense. And now I realize that there's a reason for me having my ups and downs, and I'm relieved to know that there's a reason for it. So it was more of like a relief at the end of it.
So are you able to explain sort of what is bipolar disorder?
I'm not able to explain medically what it is, but I can tell you, for me, it was periods of time where I would go through depression. Everything in my life would be going great, but I would just be depressed, and everything that I would think about was just negative. And of course that would spark, you know, my bulimia or my cutting and this and that, and I would just, it was bad. It was just all negative. And then I'd go through these periods of times where I would be on top of the world, like literally, and I would fill up my schedule so much because I would be almost like hyper, like really, really hyper. And it could last days where I wouldn't sleep. I like could not sleep to save my life. And I would write like 7 songs in one night. And there was another time where, like, you know, I sat down with my manager and I was really manic, and I remember just sitting there and filling up all of my days off. And he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, no, I can do it. Like, I just want to be really successful this year. And it was really dangerous for me because I ended up filling up all of my time off because I thought I could handle it. You don't really think that's dangerous or as dangerous as being depressed, but it is. I end up overworking myself because I think I'm on top of the world. I end up partying really hard and draining myself, and it's no good.
All my windows still are broken, but I'm standing on my feet.
After going through so much, I wanted to know why Demi felt the need to talk about her issues in such a public way.
There are still young girls out there, young teenage girls and boys, that have eating disorders, that are cutting, and they don't have anyone out there right now to look at and say it's going to be okay.
You're watching Demi Lovato Unbroken.